Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're diving deep into the teachings of the Indian mystic Osho.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, you specifically wanted to explore his lecture on Onkar Satnam,
Okay.
which is all about this idea of, like finding oneness.
Right.
And so we're going to be exploring writings from Osho himself and kind of like some analysis and commentary that unpacks these powerful ideas.
Yeah.
So get ready for a deep dive into consciousness and self-discovery.
What's really interesting to me is how Osho doesn't present this idea of oneness as like some strict belief system.
Right.
It's more like a journey, like rediscovering something that's already inside of us.
I see that's a great point, because it seems like what he's saying is we've all become fragmented in some way,
Yeah.
disconnected from this like ultimate source of unity.
Mhm.
He even uses that metaphor of a sunbeam
Right.
splitting into a rainbow
I remember that.
to kind of like illustrate this idea.
Yeah, and what's fascinating is that he acknowledges the different ways that spiritual traditions see this fragmentation.
Uh-huh.
Some emphasize duality, right?
Mhm.
The separation of like mind and matter or self, and
Okay.
others talk about a trinity or the five senses pulling us in different directions.
Mhm.
But ultimately, the goal across these diverse paths is the same,
Yeah.
to rediscover that underlying unity.
Oh. So if we're all on this journey to find oneness, right?
Right.
How do we even begin to, navigate the many paths and perspectives?
Yeah.
How do we even recognize this underlying unity when we're just bombarded by the external world all the time?
Well, Osho talks about the five senses
Okay.
as being like prominent figures in a king's court.
Mhm.
They're powerful influences,
Yeah.
but they're not the true advisor.
Okay.
The real guide, he says, is dhyana.
Diana.
Now, this is often translated as like attention or meditation,
Okay.
but it's actually much more nuanced than that.
I see.
It's about cultivating a deep awareness,
Okay.
a focused presence that
Yeah.
allows us to see beyond the surface level of things.
When I think about how easily I get distracted by, everything, the news, social media, just like the constant information overload,
Yeah.
I wonder, like, is Diana the key to breaking free from that sensory overload?
Absolutely.
Because let's be honest, who hasn't felt like that king's guest,
Right.
totally consumed by fear and unable to see anything else?
Exactly. Osho uses that story of the king and the sword
Right.
to highlight how fixating on one thing, even fear,
Yeah.
can make us totally oblivious to everything else.
Yeah.
And it's not just fear, right? It could be anything that consumes our attention.
Right, like work relationship.
Exactly. Desires, even our own thoughts.
Yeah.
We become so absorbed in these external stimuli
Hmm.
that we lose touch with that inner awareness,
Yeah.
that silent observer within.
Okay, I'm starting to get this.
Good.
So if we can cultivate Diana, this deep inner awareness,
Yes.
can we actually transcend the pull of those, five prominent figures in our own internal courts, so to speak?
Yeah.
Can we actually quiet those external voices and tune into something deeper?
That's exactly what Osho suggests.
Okay.
He says that by training our attention on the present moment,
Okay.
and this is where practices like meditation come in,
Mm-hmm.
we can move beyond the fleeting nature of those external experiences
Yeah.
and connect with something more enduring.
Okay.
We start to see through that illusion of separation,
Mm-hmm.
recognizing that sense of interconnectedness that he calls Ek Onkar Satnam.
Oh, wait. So is this where the concept of Maya comes in?
Yeah.
Because I've always found that idea a bit perplexing,
Okay.
this illusionary nature of the world.
Yeah.
I mean, does it mean that the world isn't real?
That's a great question, and it's one that a lot of people grapple with.
Yeah.
Osho clarifies that Maya doesn't mean the world isn't real in a physical sense.
Okay.
Instead, it points to the way our desires, our fears and attachments shape how we see reality. We get so caught up in our own subjective experience
Right.
that we miss the underlying truth, the interconnectedness of all things.
Okay.
It's like looking through a distorted lens.
Okay.
The world we see is real,
Right.
but our interpretation of it is clouded by our own mental filters.
So recognizing Maya is like the first step to clearing those lenses.
Exactly.
And that's where Dinah comes in.
Exactly. By cultivating dhyana,
Okay.
we start to see beyond our own limited perspective, beyond those mental filters.
Okay.
It's like taking off a pair of blurry glasses
Yeah.
and seeing the world clearly for the first time.
So we've got this fragmented self, this journey towards oneness,
Right.
this concept of Dhyana as the path
Mhm.
and Maya as this illusion we need to see through.
Yes.
And it sounds like recognizing Maya is crucial for this journey towards oneness.
It is.
But Osho also has some pretty strong opinions about gurus, right?
Yes. And this is where it gets even more interesting.
Okay.
Osho cautions against blindly following anyone who claims to be a guru.
Okay.
He emphasizes the need for discernment, for using our own wisdom and intuition to figure out who is genuinely walking the path,
Okay.
who's just playing a role.
I think that's such an important point, especially today.
Absolutely.
It seems like everyone and their dog is claiming to be some kind of spiritual teacher.
I know, right?
Or life coach.
It's everywhere.
But how do we even develop that discernment?
That's the question.
How do we know the difference between a true guru, someone who can actually guide us towards this experience of oneness, and someone who's just trying to sell us something?
Well, Osho shares a story about Buddha.
Okay.
And his encounter with a teacher named Alara Kalama.
Alara Kalama.
Now, Alara Kalama was a respected teacher himself.
Okay.
But he had the humility to acknowledge his own limitations. He actually encouraged Buddha to keep searching.
Wow.
To find a path that resonated more deeply with his own truth.
So a true guru isn't afraid to admit they don't have all the answers.
Exactly.
They actually empower their students to find their own way.
Precisely, a true teacher guides us toward self-discovery. Not blind adherence to their own dogma.
Right.
They act as a mirror, reflecting our own inner wisdom back to us.
Okay.
Helping us to see our own potential for awakening.
That's a powerful image.
Yeah.
The guru as a mirror.
Yeah.
But what about the flip side? What happens when we follow false gurus?
Ooh, that's a good question.
The ones who might be more interested in power or personal gain than in guiding others towards genuine spiritual growth.
That's a crucial question.
Yeah.
And one that Osho addresses directly.
Okay.
He warns that following false gurus can lead to disillusionment, to losing faith in the spiritual path altogether.
I can see that.
It's like embarking on a journey with a faulty map.
Right.
You might end up lost and discouraged, wondering if the destination even exists.
So how do we avoid falling into that trap?
Well, how do we know?
What are the red flags we should look out for?
Yeah. Are there signs that point us towards a genuine teacher? How can we be sure we're on the right path, heading toward that oneness that Osho talks about?
Yeah, that's a big question.
That's what we'll be exploring in the next part of our deep dive.
Okay.
But first, I want to hear from you.
Okay.
What stands out to you so far from what we've talked about?
Yeah.
What resonates most deeply with your own experience?
Yeah. What are you thinking? You know, it's amazing how Osho uses stories, right, to explain these really complex ideas.
It makes them so much more relatable.
Yeah, they make it so much more relatable.
Yeah.
Like the story of the king and the sword, it just perfectly captures how our obsession with external things can blind us to what's happening inside.
Yeah, true stories have a way of bypassing our intellectual defenses.
Yeah.
And speaking directly to our hearts.
Yeah. Yeah. And that story of Buddha and Alara Kalama.
Yes.
It just beautifully demonstrates the humility of a true spiritual teacher.
It does.
It's a powerful reminder that the path to enlightenment isn't about blindly following someone else.
Yeah.
It's about discovering our own truth.
Absolutely.
But as we were talking about before, finding a genuine teacher can feel like navigating a minefield.
I know, it's tricky.
Especially with so many self-proclaimed gurus out there.
Everywhere.
How do we develop that discernment that Osho talks about?
Right.
What are the signs of a true guru?
Okay.
And more importantly, how do we avoid those who might be seeking power or personal gain?
That's the million-dollar question, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Osho emphasizes that a true guru is not driven by ego
Okay.
or the desire for followers or material wealth. They're not attached to their own status or image.
Okay.
Their focus is on guiding their students towards self-realization,
Yeah.
toward that inner experience of oneness that transcends all concepts and beliefs.
You mentioned earlier that genuine spirituality can be more persuasive than intellectual arguments.
Yes.
And I think Osho's story about Ramakrishna and the skeptic really shows that.
That's such a powerful story.
Yeah.
Ramakrishna doesn't try to convert the skeptic or win an argument.
Right.
He simply embodies his faith so authentically that it opens up the skeptic's worldview.
Right.
It's a beautiful example of how lived experience can speak volumes where words often fail.
This idea that authentic spirituality transcends language.
Yes.
It reminds me of Osho's point about the divine being ultimately indescribable.
Right.
If it's beyond language, how can we even begin to understand it?
That's where we need to shift from intellectual understanding to direct experience.
Okay.
Osho suggests that through practices like meditation, through quieting the mind and turning inward,
Okay.
we can access a dimension of reality that's beyond words.
So it's about moving beyond concepts and theories and actually experiencing this oneness directly?
Yes.
But how do we do that? It seems like such a tall order to quiet the mind.
It is a tall order.
Especially with everything going on in our lives.
I know, right? So much going on.
Do you have any personal insights or tips on how to actually make this shift from thinking about the divine to experiencing it?
It's definitely a practice. You know?
Yeah.
It requires commitment and patience.
Okay.
Osho talks about meditation a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Becoming aware of that constant stream of thoughts and emotions that pull us away from the present moment.
Yeah, it's like a whirlwind.
It is like a whirlwind.
Yeah.
But he also emphasizes that this awareness isn't about suppressing our thoughts.
Okay.
Or controlling them.
Right.
It's more about observing them without judgment.
Okay.
Letting them arise and pass away like clouds.
I see.
Drifting across the sky.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So instead of getting caught up in all those thoughts,
Yes.
we learn to just witness them.
Exactly.
But I have to admit that still sounds pretty challenging.
It is. It's a practice.
Yeah.
Do you have any practical advice for people who might be new to meditation or who are struggling to quiet their minds?
Yeah, what do you suggest?
There are so many different meditation techniques out there.
Right.
But the essence is to cultivate a state of awareness.
Okay.
One simple practice is to focus on your breath.
Okay.
As you inhale and exhale.
Mm-hmm.
Notice the sensations of the breath entering and leaving your body.
Okay.
And when your mind wanders, just gently guide it back to the breath.
Okay.
It's like training a puppy.
Okay.
You have to be patient and persistent.
Right.
But over time, the mind naturally settles down.
That's a great analogy.
Nice.
It reminds me of something else Osho talks about.
Yeah.
The 3 pillars of Dharma, Daya, and Santosha.
Yes.
Can you remind us what those represent and how they relate to our spiritual growth?
Or
Especially in the context of this journey towards oneness.
absolutely. These pillars offer a framework for living a more balanced and fulfilling life.
Okay.
Dharma refers to living in alignment with our true nature,
Mm-hmm.
our deepest values and principles.
Okay.
Daya represents compassion, the ability to connect with the suffering of others
Yeah.
and respond with kindness and empathy.
And Santosha.
Santosha is contentment,
Okay.
a state of inner peace and acceptance that's not dependent on external circumstances.
It seems like these 3 pillars are all interconnected,
They are.
that they support each other.
Yeah.
Like we cultivate inner contentment through Santosha, which allows us to extend compassion more freely.
Exactly.
And when we're living in alignment with our Dharma,
Yes.
our actions naturally flow from a place of integrity and purpose.
Like a virtuous cycle.
Yeah, it's like a beautiful cycle.
It is.
You've hit the nail on the head.
Thanks.
It's not about compartmentalizing these qualities,
Right.
but about integrating them into our lives in a holistic way.
Exactly.
Osho isn't advocating for retreating from the world
Well,
or becoming solely focused on our own spiritual development.
right.
He emphasizes that true spiritual growth involves engaging with the world
Right.
in a meaningful and compassionate way. That makes sense.
Yeah.
It's not about escaping the world, but about transforming our relationship with it.
Exactly.
But I have to admit, the idea of Santosha,
Yeah.
contentment,
Mm-hmm.
it feels particularly challenging in our modern world.
I know, it's tough.
It constantly pushes us to strive for more,
More.
to achieve,
Yes.
to acquire.
Yeah, we're always wanting more.
How do we cultivate contentment
Right.
in a culture that thrives on dissatisfaction?
It's a valid point, and it's something that a lot of us struggle with.
Yeah.
But Osho reminds us that true contentment comes from within,
Okay.
from recognizing the abundance that's already present in our lives.
Mm-hmm.
It's about shifting our focus
Okay.
from what we lack to what we already have,
I see.
from constantly chasing after something more,
Right.
to appreciating the simple joys and blessings that are all around us.
That reminds me of something you mentioned earlier, this idea of shifting our perception.
Right.
Like from what is missing to what is present.
Exactly.
It's a subtle but powerful shift in perspective.
It is.
And I'm guessing that's where gratitude comes in.
Absolutely. Gratitude is a powerful antidote to dissatisfaction.
Okay.
When we take the time to appreciate the good things in our lives,
Yeah.
even the small things,
Mm-hmm.
we start to shift our energy.
Okay.
We start to see the world through a lens of abundance
Mm-hmm.
rather than scarcity.
And I imagine that this shift in perspective can affect other areas of our lives too.
Exactly. When we cultivate contentment, we're less likely to be driven by fear or the need to control everything.
Right.
We can approach challenges with more ease and grace, knowing that everything is unfolding as it should.
This ties back to Osho's emphasis on letting go of control.
Yes.
Surrendering to the flow of life.
Exactly.
It seems like a radical concept.
It is.
Especially in a society that values ambition and self-determination.
Right.
I mean, doesn't letting go contradict our natural drive to achieve our goals?
It might seem counterintuitive.
Yeah.
But surrendering control doesn't mean giving up on our aspirations.
Okay.
It's more about recognizing that we don't always have all the answers. That sometimes the best course of action is to trust.
Trust in what?
Trust in a larger intelligence at work.
Okay.
It's about letting go of the need to micromanage our lives.
Yeah.
And allowing ourselves to be guided by something greater.
So it's about trusting the process.
Yes.
Even when things don't go according to plan.
Exactly.
It's about having faith that everything is unfolding as it should, even when it feels challenging or uncertain.
Yes.
But how do we cultivate that kind of trust?
That's something we can explore in the final part of our deep dive.
Okay.
But first, I'd love to hear what's standing out to you so far. What's resonating most deeply with you?
As we've been talking about Dhyana and Maya and this journey to oneness, it makes me think about how much people crave meaning and purpose.
It's true. Osho's words really resonate with that, that longing for connection.
Well,
or something beyond just everyday life.
Exactly. And it seems like that inner compass he talks about,
Yeah.
it's rooted in that experience of oneness.
Absolutely.
The realization that we're not isolated individuals, but like threads in this grand tapestry.
I love that analogy.
This brings us back to what we were talking about before, shifting our perception from scarcity to abundance, from focusing on what's missing to appreciating what's here.
It's a big shift.
It's so easy to get caught in that trap of always wanting more.
It is. I know I've been there.
Have you? I'm curious, do you have any personal experience
I do.
with making that shift? Like, what helped you break free from that feeling of lack?
Well, it's definitely an ongoing practice.
Yeah.
But one thing that's helped me is practicing gratitude.
Okay.
Just taking a few moments each day to reflect on what I'm grateful for, even small things.
Yeah.
It really helps me shift my focus to what I do have.
It's amazing how much that can change your perspective.
It is. It's powerful.
Yeah. And I bet that shift in perspective can help us let go of that need to control outcomes.
Absolutely. When we're feeling that lack, we tend to hold on tight to our desires.
Right.
Trying to force things to go our way.
Yeah, like we're white-knuckling it.
Exactly. But when we cultivate contentment and recognize that abundance is already there, we can relax a bit.
Okay.
And trust that life is unfolding as it should.
So it's not about giving up on our goals or being passive.
No, not at all.
It's about approaching life with more trust and openness.
Exactly. Allowing things to unfold naturally.
Like taking a leap of faith.
Yeah.
Trusting that even if we stumble, we'll land where we need to be.
Exactly. And that trust is really connected to living in accordance with our dharma.
Okay.
Our true nature.
Right.
When we're aligned with our dharma, things flow more effortlessly and we experience a deeper sense of purpose.
But how do we actually discover our dharma? It seems like so many people struggle with that.
It is a journey. It involves peeling back layers of conditioning and expectations to find what truly resonates with us.
Yeah.
Osho says our dharma isn't something we figure out intellectually.
Okay.
It's more about tuning in to our inner wisdom.
Okay.
Listening to those whispers of our soul.
So it's about paying attention to what brings us joy.
Yes.
What makes us feel alive.
Exactly what lights us up.
It reminds me of that Joseph Campbell quote, "Follow your bliss."
Oh, I love that quote.
And this brings us back to oneness, doesn't it?
It does.
If we're all interconnected, then our individual dharma, like our unique contribution, ultimately benefits everyone.
It's like we're each a piece of a puzzle.
Okay.
And when we find our place, the picture becomes clearer, more complete.
Osho also talks about balance,
He does.
finding harmony between inner peace and action in the world.
Yes, it's not about retreating from the world.
Right.
It's about integrating our spiritual growth into our daily lives.
Exactly. And that involves cultivating Daya and Santosha,
Yes.
compassion and contentment.
Finding that sweet spot where we're at peace within
Mm-hmm.
and also engaged in the world in a meaningful way.
It's a beautiful vision.
It is a beautiful vision.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into Osho's teachings, what practical steps can our listeners take to really embody these principles?
Well, Osho offers so much wisdom,
Yeah.
but I think one of the most important things is mindfulness.
Okay.
By becoming aware of our thoughts, emotions, and actions,
Mm-hmm.
we create space between ourselves and our reactions.
Okay.
We can choose to respond to challenges with more wisdom and compassion.
And how can we cultivate compassion
That's a good question.
in a world that feels so divided right now?
It's tough these days.
How do we open our hearts to people who have different views? Or who may have even hurt us?
Osho reminds us that compassion arises naturally
Okay.
when we recognize our interconnectedness,
Uh-huh.
when we see ourselves in others.
Yeah.
When we understand that their suffering is our suffering,
Okay.
those walls start to break down.
So it's not about condoning harmful actions,
Right.
but about recognizing our shared humanity.
Exactly.
It seems like that shift in perspective could really change the world.
It could. It really could.
Well, we've covered a lot today.
Yeah.
We explored Osho's teachings on oneness,
Mhm.
the illusion of Maya,
Yeah.
the importance of finding a true guru.
And the power of dhyana.
And we talked about Dharmadaya and Santosha
Yeah.
and finding that balance between inner peace and outward action.
A beautiful balance.
So what does all this mean for you, dear listener? What stands out to you from this deep dive? What will you take away from this exploration into Osho's teachings?
What resonates most deeply with your own experiences?
What one small step will you take today to cultivate more oneness and compassion or contentment in your own life?
Maybe this deep dive has sparked something new for you.
Yeah.
A new awareness, a new possibility, a new direction.
Remember, the journey to oneness is a process. It's a continuous unfolding.
Yes.
There's no final destination.
Just the journey.
Just the ever-evolving dance between our inner world and the world around us.
Beautifully said.
So until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.
Please like, share and subscribe.